Hello, hello. This episode is an absolute cracker, and that is because I am interviewing my good friend and adventure filmmaker, Alex Gooch Ugarte. And Alex and me met probably about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when we were working on the TV show Alone Australia. We became firm friends. He just has the most infectious, beautiful, fun energy, and everyone is just inspired and wants to be around him. In today's episode, we talk about why he quit the corporate, the 9 to 5, to follow his own call to adventure, giving up the safety and the security of an income, coming in and actually just going off around the world, learning as he went and filming these crazy adventures that are now up on YouTube for you to watch. Alex is just so infectious and so inspiring. And I just know the stories that he shares in this episode are going to help you to overcome any obstacles you might be facing. Let's get into it. All right. Well, let's get started. We both got our cups of tea. We're good to go. Okay. You have created this life now where you are on the road, you are on planes, you are living this wild life of adventure and obviously filming everything on the way. And this is the kind of life that I know a lot of people would like dream of. They'd be like, you've created my dream life. But have there been any moments where you've literally been like, I'm out, I want to turn back, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm done?
Oh, so many. So many. There is something deep within inside of me that is pushing me forward and driving me forward towards a vision and a goal. And I know deep down that I will stay on this path. Nothing will ever make me deviate or like go back to my old life. But yeah, just the amount of work it takes, the amount of commitment, the mental toll, the physical toll, the toll on relationships as well. Like you won't see your family and friends as much. It just takes a lot of sacrifice, a huge amount of sacrifice to go down this path and to follow your calling and to chase your dreams and to do the thing you love the most. But I think it's totally worth it because at the end of the day, you've really it's so fulfilling to go down that path and to chase your dream, so like for me personally, I don't think I could live any other way. So I'm giving all these things up, but all the greatest things in life are the most fulfilling and rewarding things take huge amounts of sacrifice. I accept that. I keep moving forward. But yeah, all the time I want to sort of just give it all up and walk away and call it quits and just throw my laptop against a wall or, I don't know, put my head through a window or something. But yeah,
You're selling the life of an adventure filmmaker. I have to say, everyone's like, where do I sign up?
The feeling of a sense of accomplishment and achievement far outweighs all the hard times and all the bad times and all the sacrifice. I'll put it that way.
Let's go back because obviously we met when we were working on Alone Australia. You were obviously a shooter producer on that, but before that, and this is really your journey into adventure filmmaking started way before that anyway. But can you tell me about your life before adventure filmmaking came to be? What were you doing? What were you getting up to?
I was a real estate agent.
It just makes me laugh. I just can't imagine it. It's so funny.
Commercial real estate agent, suit and tie, slick back hair. Yeah, that was my life. 9 to 5 for at least 6 or 7 years. It's what I did straight out of high school. Yeah, so I got into that life. And yeah, look, I didn't hate it. It's not that I didn't necessarily hate that job. I hate that life. It was challenging. It did take a lot of like energy and effort and brain power and problem solving. And so it's kind of simple. Like yeah, kind of similar in a way to filmmaking where it's just problem solving. That's all an adventure filmmaker does, is solving problems logistically or technically with your cameras and stuff. So similar in that respect. Um, but the whole kind of like office facade, the office persona that you had to wear, to work every day kind of just wore me down. The fact that I couldn't just be myself all the time. As soon as you step into that
Yeah.
office, there's a certain etiquette. There's a way of talking, a way of being. You've got to like almost become someone else to fit in that environment. And
Absolutely. And I think I will just say sorry for anyone who's listening who is a real estate agent. I'm not laughing at the profession. It's just
not at all.
knowing you, I'm just
Oh
like
yeah, knowing me.
you are such a free spirit that the thought of you in real estate is just so foreign to me. It just yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm not making fun of the profession at all. But you said you didn't hate it, but obviously there was something about it. Like, you said you didn't like putting the shirt and tie on and all that kind of stuff. So where was this kind of adventure filmmaking like dream or vision? Where did that come from? And how long were you thinking of that when you were, I guess, in the 9 to 5?
Really early on, I think there was a spark in like my early 20s when actually I lost my license for a long period of time. Like all opportunities come, in weird ways. And that actually made me go traveling overseas for about a year and a half. And I ended up staying in Budapest in Hungary for about 9 months. And I worked in a hostel there. And that was the first time I was really exposed to people who had different ways of living, thinking, a lot of people that kind of lived on the fringes of society, who didn't conform to social constructs and norms, like a lot of artists, a lot of just like strange people, like if you're, 10 years ago, if you're traveling around in Budapest in Hungary, it was like, wasn't as popular as it is now. Um, and that was the first time where I was like, okay, like you can do other things with your life. I never realized you could do anything outside of business. It just was like, it seemed like the only career path. I didn't realize you could like make music or make films or write or do any of those other things. I thought you just left school, you got a job in business, you bought a house, you had kids. You know what I mean? I just had that like typical trajectory in my mind. I was like, oh, that's my only path. I'll just go down that path. So that was like really the beginning of like, oh wow, I can do other things with my life. And but I wasn't quite ready to act on that information. That was like my first call to adventure, but I rejected it. So I came back from overseas, got a job with like one of the world's largest commercial real estate agencies. It's supposed to be like the job, that everyone wants when they get into commercial real estate. And so I was in that for about 3 or 4 years. At the same time, once a year, every year, I was going to something called the Banff Mountain Film Festival, which is a film festival for adventure films. And it would come to Australian shores once a year, every year. And I was going to see that. And every year I'd be like, I was like, kind of like what these guys are doing. Something resonated with me. I was like, I feel like I could do this. I don't know why. Like I don't have any skills. At that time I don't know how to use a camera. I don't know how to tell a story. I don't know how to go on an adventure. I don't know how to hike. I don't know how to bike pack. I don't know how to do anything. But it's just something was speaking to me and I was like, okay, I've got to listen to this little voice that's speaking to me. Um and so I went year after year after year. And then one of the years I was just like, you know what? Like, I think I can do this. And then at the very end of the festival, the credits were rolling. And I was sitting there in my seat, and everyone's like shuffling in their seats and chairs, like ready to exit the cinema. And I just made a promise to myself in that moment. I just said, you know what? No matter what happens, I'm making a promise to myself right now that I'm going to become an adventure filmmaker. And no matter what I need to do, I'm just going to have to do it. And so from that point on, I just started like organizing my life and my world so I could start exiting this business realm and then setting my life in a new trajectory towards this adventure filmmaking life.
And so, I mean, obviously, it sounds like the way you're describing it is like, yeah, I just made this decision and I jumped. But As we both know, there are a lot of skills you need from a camera person, shooter perspective, from a storytelling perspective, getting all the equipment, planning everything. I mean, where did you first start to skill up? How did you start to acquire the skills that would then lead on to being an adventure filmmaker?
Such a long journey. When now that you're making me look back
It's
over
got
it,
time.
it's just so gradual, isn't it? Like once you start,
Hmm.
I feel like once you start on your path, then doors and you start like putting actions in place and like actually doing things that are gonna like produce a result like on your path. Doors start opening. Like I feel like once you decide to go down a certain path, things start happening. The universe starts conspiring to help you, and kind of like you get little drops of packages of help that drop in your lap along the way. Like nice little surprises. But it just starts with low hanging fruit. Like, what can you do? And so for me, it started with a traveling podcast, and I was like, okay, I can't afford camera gear. I can just get like a couple of microphones together and stuff. I got my laptop. I think I had an iPad at that point, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Central America, and I'm just gonna like travel through the country, and then like meet people, and then interview, and then like, meet people who are living their passion in life. And I did that for like a year and a half, traveling through Central America. I'd stayed in a town called Santa Teresa for a while, and I met a guy, and I'm like, started borrowing his camera, started using that, and I was like, terrible at it. I didn't know what I was doing, but you just got to start using it. You got to start using things, and just practicing. And just when you first start using anything, it's gonna be crap. It's gonna be terrible, but just keep using it, just keep getting better and better and better. But that's kind of how it all started.
I want to talk more about the challenges that you have faced as an adventure filmmaker, not only on the road, but also like the internal challenges and obstacles that you've had to overcome. What do you think has been like one or two or three big challenges that you have chosen to overcome?
I would say probably the biggest would be self doubt. It's really when you go off on your own, um, in the way that I did, and because you're really quite isolated in a lot of ways as well. Like I went from working in a traditional office environment to now where I literally work with no one. So I'm in a vacuum, So I'm shooting in a vacuum, I'm producing in a vacuum, I'm editing in a vacuum. I do have people that like I bounce um, ideas off and that I show drafts of my adventures to, who give me honest feedback. I do have, but they're just friends. Um, but because you're in that isolated space and then you're comparing yourself to, much more established people and much more skilled people and stuff like that, it's really, really easy to start doubting yourself. Am I smart enough? Am I skilled enough? Am I funny enough? Am I, all those things, all those questions. For me personally, I think that's the hardest thing I've had to overcome. I think also the amount of time that it's taken. For me, in my head, I was like, yeah, like in a few years, I'll be crushing it and I'll be killing it, and I'm like, I'm like, how many years in am I? Like 6 years in or something, 6 years in since I've left um, real estate, and I'm still only just at the beginning, only just scratching the surface. I've got a lot of good things going, but it takes a lot more time and energy and effort than I ever thought, than I ever imagined, and also that I ever thought I could put into something. I never thought I was even capable of putting this much time, energy, and effort into anything in my life. And it's lucky that I do love it and I am passionate about it. Otherwise, I just wouldn't make it. And that's some advice I would give to people. I'd say that unless you do really love it and you are really passionate, you probably won't um, do that extra 10-20% it takes to like, make something, really great.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like something that a lot of people, maybe who aren't in the industry or haven't been in TV or film or adventure filmmaking, is when you watch something on TV, when you watch like an hour of television, you kind of just go, "Oh yeah, that was cool." But it's taken like months, not just.
So
I mean, in your case, I mean, talk me through. Say, for example, talk me through one of your adventures from start to finish, including the editing process. Like,
it's horrific,
what goes into like
man.
going
So
to the
like,
Ganges, you know,
like,
or whatever.
oh man, even at the moment, like I'm in the phase of finding an adventure, and even that is like that's also so hard because first I have to set like I've got a system and a process that I've like put in place from that I've learned, but first I need to set a framework. So what's my budget? What's my time frame? What can I achieve with my skills and the camera gear that I own? Is there red tape? Are there political issues there? Do I need filming permits? Do I need a drone permit? Do I need a visa? How long can I stay in the country? How like it's an endless list. So first I've got to find all these adventures that fit within that framework, but they've also got to be like relatively unique and interesting adventures. They can't just be like something that everyone else is doing. So even that process is exhausting and extremely time consuming. Like it could take me 2 weeks just to like settle on an adventure, and that's even before I start putting in production and like proper planning. That's just finding an adventure that fits the framework that I set out. Then for the Ganges, of like for that one specifically, I got to like find someone who's done it before and be like, hey, what's the go with this thing? Like, is it possible? I found like one guy who's done it before, and he's like, yeah, there's a dam here and a dam there, and there's crocodiles here, and there's dangerous people here. Don't paddle through here, and you can charge. You got to think about power. He's like, you can charge in this village, and it's even just like organizing the adventure is exhausting. So I feel like I'm tired by the time I even make it into the field, which is crazy to think about. And at the same time, as I'm putting the adventure together, I'm also filming myself putting the adventure together. So I've already started principal photography, and so I'm already thinking about what scenes do I need. Okay, I need myself talking to a mentor, so I need myself talking to this guy on a Zoom chat. I need to shoot it with 3 different camera angles. I need to get the audio right. I need to ask the right questions. So I'm like thinking about like technically which like what I need to shoot. I'm thinking about how I can produce that scene, but also like trying to organize the adventure and put together this mammoth 30-day trip at the same time. And that's just to get it off the ground. So that's the start.
So tell me a bit
Hey,
about your series that's currently on YouTube.
yeah, cool. So I've got two. I've got a 3-part series on the Ganges, and I've got one episode of me cycling through the Kimberley region, the Australian outback. The Ganges adventure was that was yeah, that was that was a big trip. That took my soul. Which was what made it so great. I think it was really popular. It did really well, and I think a part of the reason it did so well is because everyone just got to ride the genuine highs and lows with me. But long story short, in a nutshell, the adventure is me starting out at the bottom of the Indian Himalaya, the foothills, where the Ganges begins. And then I pack rafted over 1,000 kilometers down the Ganges solo to the ancient city, or I finished in the ancient city of Varanasi. And that took me 30 days. And so I was sleeping on riverbanks in the jungle, ashrams, people's homes in remote villages, under shop awnings, pretty much wherever I could, really. And yeah, it was very much like both a physical, mental, and cultural journey. And you really see me the the broad spectrum of highs and lows of the human condition in that series. I'll say that much.
And also am I correct in thinking that's where you actually lost some footage as
Oh,
well? You had to.
oh yeah. No, well, I lost it. I don't know. When you're first starting out, right, you're an amateur. So I wasn't backing up my footage. I was just shooting everything and keeping it on one hard drive. So I don't know when the hard drive corrupted, but I got back home and I tried to upload the footage I had on this one hard drive, and it was the first section of the trip, which was a 3 day adventure over the rapids, because there's rapids in the first section because there's glacial waters coming down from the Himalaya. And I lost those whole first 3 days, so I had to fly back to India. Well, I thought about it for a while, and I was like, look, I can start my adventure from Haridwar and lose those first 3 days, or I can fly back and I can do it again. And I felt like I had to go back. So I flew the whole way back and did that whole first 3 days again, going down. Going down the Ganges through the rapids, which was it. It it worked out. All things happen for a reason, right? And that did happen for a reason, because I actually crashed my drone into the side of a cliff on the very first day. So I didn't have any drone footage. And drone footage is massive, and especially in a spectacular scenery like that. So I had gotten my new drone, my replacement from DJI. And so I went back there with my drone and got epic drone footage of those first 3 days. And I think that really made a difference in the level of quality in what I got. And so it happened for a reason, but it was just, it was surreal doing that all again, because, I mean, that part of the world is surreal in itself, just as it is.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to talk about your mindset because obviously you said, well, everything happened for a reason, right? So the hard drive corrupted. Obviously, you got back home. I mean, I can only imagine how devastating that is when you're like, I've just done this massive trip to India. I've lost the first 3 days, which is
Yeah.
where it all begins. And you've got to make that decision there and then. Now, I know a lot of people who might just go, like, I've balls this up, forget about it. I'm either going to quit or I'm going to or I'll just cut my losses and I'll just start from where I've got the footage. So what happened in your mindset that made you go, I'm going to go back and I'm going to, travel all the way from Australia back to India, go through this whole journey again? Like what was going through your mind that made you kind of make that decision?
Um, that's a really good question. I'm so passionate about what I'm doing at the moment, and like I care about it so much, and it meant so much to me that I was like, I need it to be the best it can possibly be, and for this series to be as good as it can possibly be, and for me to make it as good as it can be, I have to go back and I have to get this first section, because that first section it's a whole episode in itself, and a whole 45-minute 50-minute episode in itself, and that kind of really that whole first section sets up the adventure. And I was like, I can't, like, I already did 30 days on the Ganges. I can't cut it short. I need to give my audience everything. I need to give it all. So I guess it really stemmed from just like caring so much about the quality of the content and the story and the integrity of the story. And I just knew that no matter how hard it was going to be, that it was the right thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet you swore a few times when you.
I didn't talk to anyone for like 3 or 4 days. I was honestly, I've never been that, like, I was almost in shock. I've never been that, because also you got to remember at the same time, like, all I'm doing is working on YouTube. I'm barely doing other jobs, so I don't have any money either. So it's not like it's like, oh yeah, I can just like easily fly back. It's like, how am I going to afford? How do I go back? I got no money to recapture this thing. Like, I'm already living hand to mouth. How am I even going to do it? And so I thought it was just gone, gone for good. And it was more just, I was just in shock. And I kept having this positive mindset of like, I'm going to get it back, because I sent the hard drives to like professional data recovery people, and I sent my hard drive to one guy locally, and I'm like, he's going to get it back. I'm going to get a phone call from him any day, and he's going to be like, Alex, I got good news. But that first phone call is like, dude, like it's gone. And I was like, no, I don't believe it, not yet. And so then I set up like another company who like does data recovery for like the government and like really high level companies, and I'm like, you're gonna get it back from me, I know it. And it was the same, it was just wiped, and so it took me a long time. It was like the stages of grief, it took me a long time to hit acceptance. Then when I did, I couldn't talk for like 2 or 3 days. I was broken. And then it started that idea. I was like, what if I go back? I'm like, oh, maybe I could go back. And then it ended up being the best thing ever. Ended up being the right thing. So that's just life. It just does that to you.
Yeah, incredible. And obviously you mentioned in there, like financially, and I think this is something that's really common with people who are following their passions. Like financially, like you said, you're doing things on YouTube right now. There's no big sponsors coming in and things like that at the moment. But I think this is something that happens a lot with people. They put off following their path or following their purpose or following, their passion because of a fear around a lack of finances,
Yeah.
like a lack of security. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you juggle that as an adventure filmmaker? Like how do you, I'm not asking for your processes or your,
Mm,
but
mm.
like how do you mentally get through that?
It's extremely tough. You've got to make sacrifices. For me, I moved back in with my parents. So I had that. So rent was gone. I had a safety net. Um, so there are sacrifices, 100%. And so that's the first thing. You got to start setting aside, big nights out with your friends and putting that to the side and start making this the most important thing. And then you've just got to really look at your life and think, how can I balance um, taking on a little bit of contract work here or getting another job in something else? Maybe I can start working in a cafe casually, and I can work 2 3 days a week. If I'm at home with my parents, I work at a cafe 2 days a week, have enough money to survive. That gives me 3 days a week or 4 days a week to work on my passion. And I think you really need to look at it that way. I'm not a huge believer in working, like still working a full-time job and then following your passion outside of those hours. If you can do that, like, praise to you, but like that's hard because if you really do
Hmm.
want to become successful at something, um, to be able to like build that outside of already working a full-time job, I think would be really, it would take a inhuman effort. I'm sure it's possible, but I wouldn't have been able to do it. Like I was already so tired after my full-time job that I wouldn't have anything left in the tank, mentally to work on something else. But I feel like a lot of fear when you're getting into your passion or like moving into something else is just fear of the unknown. It's fear of like, oh,
Mm.
like I don't know what's going to happen next. Am I going to run out of money? Am I going to be bad at the thing that I'm pursuing? Are people just going to laugh at me? What are people going to think about me socially? It's not socially, normal to like go and just pursue this thing. But that's all just fear of the unknown. Like I've found that for the most part, people are really supportive, and not only that, but they're really impressed, by what I've done, and like see me as a lot of friends will see me as an inspiration. Um, so yeah, a lot of the fear of like getting into something new, I think, is just fear of the unknown. And like once you start pursuing that thing you're passionate about, the world will start conspiring to help you, and you'll be surprised by how many things start to fall in your lap. Like there's been so many times where I thought I was going to be completely broke, or I thought, on an adventure that my backpack will fall into a river and it'll fill up with water and all my camera gear will be destroyed. But it never is. Like something always comes together and rescues me or gives me like a little cash injection or something. Yeah, something always comes to my aid, but you've just got to be on the
Yeah.
right path.
Yeah, I think a big part of it I've started to realize is trust as
Yeah.
well. Just this, like, obviously, it's not just sitting there, like, in a meditation posture, kind of just going, I trust deeply, but
Yeah.
it's, I mean, that's beautiful. And I'd love to be able to do that and have someone pay all my bills. But, there is like, obviously, there's action that you take, but I do think a lot of it, and, there were so many parallels when you were just talking then about like, just fear of like self-doubt. Am I going to be good enough? Comparing myself to other people.
Yeah,
Like, do I have the skills? Am I going to fail at this? And I think anyone, like for me, when you were saying that, I can totally apply that to my stuff. And I know there's so many people out there that have exactly the same things. You look at people who are following their passions, and I think you just go, like, I look at you and I'm just like, oh my God, Alex is doing it. He's rocking. But then it's really beautiful to have you say, yeah, I actually experience a lot of self-doubt and comparison and all that kind of stuff, because I think that it's human to go through those things. And I think when you are following your passion, or following that call to adventure, following that, it's things are like, life is going to fall away in some ways to make space for this new version of you that's
absolutely.
coming
But
in. and
yeah,
and that can sometimes include the finances and and that can feel
absolutely.
scary.
Absolutely, it is scary. And it's funny that you say that. You're like, Alex is absolutely rocking, because I'm here at my laptop, I'm here at my computer editing, going, this is all falling apart. Nothing's working. Nothing's working. Everyone else is better than me. So, you know what I mean? So that's what's going on in my head when I'm here working, and then someone else might be, it's just perspectives. Like someone else is
It
looking
is
like, he's doing so
perspective.
great, but I don't feel that
Yeah,
way because I'm always comparing myself to, like someone way above me. I'm never
of
comparing myself to
course.
people, like who are at the same level or below. I'm always like looking up. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Which is, I mean, that's a beautiful thing, right? Because it's inspirational. It's like somebody's,
Hmm.
but also it's remembering like where you are right now, they were there.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to go through this. There's that beautiful analogy of like, the caterpillar that goes into the cocoon, and when it's in the cocoon, it just breaks down into this like dirty brown goo. That's what happens. But some but
Vivid.
sorry, caterpillar. I mean, I'm pretty descriptive. I like, really painting the picture. But it's in this cocoon. All it is gunk. It's like this
Hmm.
gooey jelly mud. But within that goo is this one tiny piece of DNA that remembers in that goo how to become a butterfly. And so it reforms. Like I think people think the caterpillar goes in and then it just grows wings and then it comes out. It doesn't. It completely disintegrates.
I didn't know
And
that.
yeah, oh, I thought you'd knew.
Fascinating.
I thought you'd be all over that.
No.
Gosh, well, I'm glad I impressed you with that one. But
Yeah,
it's,
you
yeah,
did.
so there's this, so it completely breaks down, turns into like mud essentially, and then there's a piece of DNA in there that remembers how to become a butterfly, and it completely reforms, and then it comes out of the cocoon and it flies, right? So it becomes a bigger, more expansive version of itself, but it has to go through some kind of challenge and
Yeah.
disintegration of who it is. And it kind of feels like that's what you've been on your journey. It's like, obviously you had this corporate job, you were doing really well in it, that's what your vision was, because you didn't have the vision then for who you
Mm.
are. But it's like you've gone through these challenges, you've lost this footage, you've like ran out of money and kind of had to go back to India, and yet it's like you're now putting all this amazing content out onto YouTube. And I know it's not about the followers, but I mean your numbers are insane, for how much you've got out there. So it's like you're actually, I feel from the outside looking in, like you are 100% on your path. You're 100% following your passion. And now it's like, people are responding to that,
Yeah.
and like you said, just even things dropping like low hanging fruit, like
Yeah.
people coming into your life who are like, hey, there's this TV job, and hey, there's this, and hey, there's that. It's amazing, right? When you're
It
following
it
your
is
path.
amazing. It's really nice that you said that. But yeah, I feel like people can feel when you're on your path, and you're pursuing your passion, or you're creating something that you love, because I feel like it tends to resonate with them, right? Like, because I am putting my heart and soul into everything that I'm doing, like everything that I write, everything that I shoot and edit and make, even this conversation, I'm trying to be as authentic as possible, so I'm always putting my heart and soul into everything. I feel like that really resonates with people, because it's just a human condition, so we're all going through the same thing. So people see themselves reflected in me and in my plight and my successes and my failures, and they'll be doing the same with you. So I feel like the more authentic I am and the more I am following my passion, I feel like the more it resonates with people, and the more people can feel that. And that's a really nice
Yeah.
thing. But that takes a certain level of letting go, and also a certain level of leaning into your fears. And I feel like that's what a lot of chasing your passion is. It's and as Joseph Campbell put it, and obviously I love a lot of Joseph Campbell quotes, but he says, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And that's just so true, in the fact that, like, I've just found time and time again, it's leaning into your fears and going into that cave that you're afraid of. That's the beautiful things are on the other side of that. So it's like, in life, you got to go through the challenges and lean into your fears. And that's when you start learning more about yourself and life and who you are, and you start getting more rewards, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just more expansion. It's kind of, I think it's like anything, when you go through something that's hard, right? Let's
Mm,
just say a marathon or an
mm,
Ironman, something that I haven't, I've done a marathon anyway. But let's just say you're going through like some sort of physical challenge.
yeah.
um, it's like the lead up to that, you have to put a lot of work in, and then the big day comes, and then you do it, and it's hard and it's hot, and the weather conditions aren't what you expected, and you're, I don't know, your body isn't working the way that you expected it to on that day. But when you cross the finish line, it is such a feeling of, I don't know, just like there's a confidence, and there's like this
Mm,
accomplishment, and there's like, I said what I was going to do and I did it. I followed through. And I think that is something that can be applied to anything that's hard that we go through in life. It's like some things happen and we don't wish them on anyone, right? But at the same time, it's like when you come through that and you integrate whatever the lesson was, like you have the capacity to inspire, or to help others with that. And I feel that's,
100%.
that's what you're doing now. It's kind of like you're pushing through, you're going through your David and Goliath, right? It's
Yeah.
like this big, massive, monumental thing that
Mm,
normally a big production company would organize this, like Red
mm,
Bull or whoever, like a big adventure company would organize this for you, and you'd go up there and you'd have sponsors and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, it's you. You're the
mm,
production manager, the shooter, the event coordinator, the logistics, the travel, the person doing the adventure while filming it
mm.
on multiple cameras. And then coming back and
Yeah.
editing every single second of it for months.
Yeah, I bet you're right. I think, like, going through those challenges, you get that real sense of, like, any sort of challenge. You just get that, like, reward system of that sense of achievement, of overcoming something. But also, when you're going through those challenges, whether it be physical or mental, you're just learning so much about yourself all the time, and you're just growing all the time. And so for me, when I'm going through all the different challenges, wearing all the different hats that I do, I'm growing and growing and growing. And so when I'm learning all this new stuff, I can share it with people, and that's the beauty of it. As you
Yeah,
go into the challenge, you overcome the challenge, you learn something about yourself or life or whatever, and then you can share that with other people. And I think that's a really special thing about it. I think that's really was one of the most important things for me in terms of, like, content creation, is I want to make stuff that benefits people and helps people. It is just an adventure filmmaker channel, but it's also about, my life philosophies and my growth, and answering the call to adventure and how you can do that. And I'm also going to start releasing information on, planning, editing, shooting adventure films and stuff. But I don't just want to make
amazing.
content that's just like, riff raff scroll, like, social media stuff. I do want to make stuff that where I am imparting all the lessons that I learn when I go on these big adventures, and that's a big part of it for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful thing about you is, you're very authentic. It's like even sharing, because I think there's this idea with perfectionism, right? Especially online at the moment. It's like, okay, this is the final picture, this is what it looks like. Where you're like, yeah, I went to India and I didn't back up my hard drive. And it's like, okay, adventure filmmaker rule 101 is like
Yeah,
back everything up on a couple of hard drives, but you had to learn the hard way. But I
yeah,
think it's really beautiful and very authentic of you to like just being open to sharing that, because that is something that is going to help somebody else as well. It's not just like, hey, I nailed it. Like my first adventure on the Ganges, yeah, absolutely nailed it. Here's the finished product. It's like, No, there was an absolute shitstorm of events that that happened in the lead up and during.
Yeah, and
So
I think that really resonated with a lot of people because that scene where not even that scene, just like people have mentioned that thing happening to me. Out of all my adventures, they've mentioned that the most. I think out of anything, they've gone, "Oh my god, you went to India and you lost your footage and da da da," and like so obviously, yeah, I guess that sort of stuff is resonating with people. So I think that's
yeah,
really
I think
cool.
Well, I think it's definitely authentic, but it just comes back to like admitting your mistakes, right? And
Mm.
learning from your mistakes. And it's like, had you not shared that, people would have just been like, oh, like, haven't seen Gooch for a little while. Meanwhile, you're back on planes and back in India and like re-editing stuff, and no one would have known the difference. But I just think I think that's what the world needs right now is just more authenticity, more vulnerability, more
I
people
agree.
just kind of, just owning up to stuff and being like, yeah, I kind of messed up, and but it's okay, I fixed it, or whatever. So yeah.
I agree
Um
wholeheartedly. Yeah.
yeah. And so I mean, in terms of like, people really tend to romanticize adventure, I think. People have this idea. I mean, especially I'm an
They
80s
do.
girl, so like I think about, you're kind of Indiana Jones, like there's this romantical kind of. But I mean, what is for you, and you may have touched on this already, what is the hardest part, not just of the adventure, but of being a filmmaker at the same time?
Um, it's just like for me, it's just wearing so many hats at once. Like, especially being in a place like India, I'm by myself. No one speaks English. I'm in a remote place. Let's just, for example, let's say I've been paddling on the Ganges for 10 hours that day. At 6 p.m., the sun's starting to set. I've got to find a little town to see if I can, they've got somewhere for me to stay. I pull up there, but I can't just pull up there and like try and find somewhere to sleep and find some food and whatever. And I'm like already obviously spent from paddling for that 10 hours. I mean, completely shattered. But I've got to think about the story. So I've got to go, okay, I'm entering this. So I need to put on, my wide shot cam that's looking back on me. I've got to put on my POV. I might even get out my piece to camera cam, and I've got to record me, turning up to this town and meeting the people and all that stuff, and think about what I'm going to say to them and how I want to frame it and how I want to tell this story of like arriving at this town and finding somewhere to stay at the same time as already being completely shattered and I barely have the mental capacity to even, function at that point, let's say I'm 20 days in on the trip, Um, so yeah, it's just the extreme amount of mental energy that it takes to put to do something like that. Like especially on the Ganges, I wasn't sleeping a lot. I'd maybe get like 4 hours a night at best because sometimes I'm sleeping in the jungle and it's like poor conditions, or I can hear crazy animals outside the tent, and I'm there with my oar, half my oar next to my bed, like aiming at the door of the tent, And then the next morning, I wake up at 5 a.m. Then I'm back in the boat, and I'm in the boat for 10 hours, and then I find my next place to sleep. But at the same time, I'm trying to shoot all this and tell a story, and so I guess it's just for me, it's just you need an extreme amount of stamina, and it just ties back to what I was saying earlier: is you just have to really love it, because if you don't love it, then you're not going to do that. No one in their
Yeah,
right mind is going
absolutely.
to do. No one in their right mind is going to do that. You have to really be passionate. And for me, there's like it's a beautiful marrying of a few different passions. Where I love traveling. I like extreme physical challenges. I love mixing with cultures and having cultural experiences, and I love filmmaking. So it's like I have this nice all my passions kind of like get to sort of melt into one in one thing, and so it allows me to do that. But yeah, it's just hard work. It's really hard work,
I
and
think I
yeah,
think when I look back, the recording of this, I think hard work is going to show up quite a few times during
yeah,
this. But that's the thing,
yeah,
right? You're obviously so passionate about it. It's like, yeah,
I'm
it is
pretty,
hard work. Yeah, it
yeah,
is draining. But
yeah,
yet
and
here
even I
you
find,
are.
yeah, here I am. But I even find like The work back here, editing can be sometimes just as hard. Like, God, I've had the battles I've had editing is just like it can almost seem as exhausting as the adventure because I've got like, so say for the Ganges trip, I've got 30 days worth of footage. I've got 3 different cameras and a drone. It's just me by myself. So, I've got to sort through 30 days, however many hours I'm filming every day of footage. I've got to get through that and I've got to cut that down. And then even that in itself is its own journey. And then, I've got to, make a story, like construct a story and then do the color grading and the audio correction and, the transitions and the sound effects and all the different drafts and reworking it and getting people to look at it and rework that, and then even uploading it to YouTube is its whole own thing. Because so it's just you're right. Hard work is a theme that I guess kind of runs through everything that I do. But it's a labor of
Yeah.
love. But
Absolutely. And also, I think the interesting thing as well is because obviously you are filming yourself on these adventures, like
Mm.
essentially it's your journey, it's your, as you're like getting smashed as you go down the Ganges by all the waves and stuff and falling out, and you've got cameras strapped onto everything, but then to edit all of that, you're editing yourself, right? So, I mean,
Mm.
do you find yourself being kind of, how do you find that process of editing yourself, especially when you're trying to tell a story? Do you find yourself being critical because you didn't say something at the right moment, or,
Oh.
or what's that
Well,
like?
let me just put it this way. You know how everyone hates their voice?
Uh-huh.
When they hear their voice on a recording or whatever, I have to stare at
Yeah.
myself for 30 hours giving interviews to camera and talking to people. And so I not only hate my voice, but I've got to look at myself for ages. It's really hard. It's very, very hard to produce yourself and direct yourself.
Mm.
Because you, especially after spending so much time with the footage, you start to first answer your question. Sometimes I am like bummed out that I didn't ask a question here or there, or I might have missed something. But there's a lot of kind of stuff you can do in editing to magic around some stuff that I missed a lot of the time. And I do have shot lists and stuff like that I do follow in the field. But my mentor did tell me, Tim Noonan, he did tell me, it's like it's really hard to like edit and direct yourself and produce when you're editing yourself. Is like it's really difficult, and that advice ended up being so right. Unfortunately, I can't afford an editor, but not for the amount of footage I've got. But you start to lose perspective on what, if the content's any good, if what you said is funny, or if it's poignant, or if it works in that space. Because you spend first of all, you're in the field and you shoot it all, and then when you get back, you're just spending so many hours watching the same scenes over and over and over again that sometimes the scenes start to even lose meaning to you, and you're like, is this scene even
Mm-hmm.
interesting? Is anybody going to care? And it gets really weird after a while because you're too close to it. It's, first of all, it's
Yeah.
you up there, but then you're just too close to the footage. Like, you just spent too much time with it. So that's why I get like other people to review it, like really close friends who I trust their opinions and stuff, to review it and have a look at it and just give me really honest feedback, which always sucks.
Because they're like, it's
no,
great,
no,
or or
no,
no.
no, because they're
What
like,
did they say?
no, my mate would be like, "Nah, I don't like that scene. It was horrible." And I'd be like, "What? What?" Like, I spent like a week making that. No, yeah, he'd be like, "Nah, that sucks. Nah, I didn't like that." But that's what I need.
Wow.
Like, I need like that
Yeah.
hard criticism. But it is really hard to do it all yourself. It does get weird, and sometimes I feel like I get closer to burnout editing than I do any other part of the process. It really
Yeah. Well, I
like,
think it's all that screen time, because when you're
well,
on the adventures, right, you are in nature. Even though
yeah,
you're like filming, you're like on the Ganges, you're up a mountain in the
yeah.
snow, you're like, on a bike up in the Kimberleys, like you're immersed in nature.
Mm,
And so you're outdoors and you're moving, where I feel like the editing process is Yeah, you're sat on your ass in a room by yourself for like a couple of
100%.
months.
100%, and completely isolated. Like you're not working with people, you're not seeing
Hmm.
people. You might see your friends, once a week or once every couple of weeks or whatever. But you're very isolated. It's just you and this adventure that you've been staring at for 3 weeks. And the same thing over and over and over again. You're just in a little room. It's always dark. I get the room dark, and it's just like it can be very isolating, and
Yeah,
yeah, you can start to really lose perspective on the story. So it's difficult.
yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I've never was made. I tried when I was in TV, I tried to do post-production a couple of times and it just was not for me.
Yeah.
I'd forget which, sometimes when you're editing and you take a piece out and then you're like, oh, did I take that piece out or was that in another scene now? Where did I move that? And my brain doesn't work like that. My brain is like people, conversations, connections. But if I'm like putting a jigsaw puzzle back together in 500 different ways, my brain just cannot handle it. It doesn't work that way. So I feel your pain and I'm sending you
Oh,
like love bubbles, so you don't burn out. But
oh, thank
phew,
you.
what a job. What a
Yeah.
job. Okay, so I want to ask a couple more questions.
Mhm.
So just in terms of for somebody who's starting out, what advice would you give them? Like for someone who's like in your shoes, let's say they're in a corporate job, whether it's adventure filmmaking or whether it's
Mm,
just following, actually, yeah, let's make it more about following their passion, like
mm.
really going for it. Like what advice would you give someone who's feeling the call to adventure, the call to their path?
Yeah. I think the advice I would give would tend to like trend rather than like in terms of how to approach it. It would be more philosophical in terms of like if I could talk to myself when I was first exiting real estate and chasing my passion, I would just say don't put so much pressure on yourself and don't be so hard on yourself. Like it's a long journey. You're in it for the long game. It's going to take a long, long time. Everything takes longer than you think it's going to. So you might have these lofty goals of like, yeah, I'm going to be here in 5 years, but you won't. It'll take 10 years, but that's okay because a lot of beautiful things are going to unfold and happen in that 10 years, and it'll work out perfectly for you. But yeah, I would just say don't put so much pressure on yourself. Just trust in the universe, and things will start working out
Hmm.
once you decide. Make that hard decision to like definitively follow your passion and start pursuing it. Yeah, just yeah. So trust in the universe and don't put so much pressure on yourself. I think, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Because for me, that's kind of like what didn't stunt my growth, but it's just there was a lot of stress in those early years. Even now, I still stress too much. I think that's a work on for me, but I think a lot of people might feel the same way. It's
Oh
just
God, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I think from my perspective, like I think I've always grown up, maybe you were the same where it was like, cool, get the job, like keep
yeah,
the money coming in, like take care of yourself,
totally,
all that stuff. And obviously that is important, right? Nobody wants to end up on the streets or anything like that. But I think, stepping away from that big media career or the corporate career or whatever, there is going to be a period of time where you do take a hit financially, whatever
sure,
you're trying to do. And so, I love your approach of, yeah, just like if you can, like go part time so you can work on your dream and
mm,
then, slowly start to come away from that. And I know people will have different opinions about that. People will be like, nah, you've got to go all in, quit the job. But that's not going to work for certain people. You've
no,
got bills, kids,
yeah,
whatever. So it's like, I think just follow your passion to the best of your
yeah,
ability with where you're at. But there is going to come a day, if it really truly is a passion, and it really is truly something that you want to do full time, where you are going to have to step off the ledge, so to speak, and
yeah,
just hope, just know, just trust that you're going to be looked after. Trust
totally,
that, but
hundred
it's
percent.
it's scary. It is scary.
100%. I couldn't agree with you
Yeah.
more. And I think just accepting the fact that life's going to get unconventional. Your life isn't going to look like what everyone else is doing. And that's okay. There is no set path. There's definitely no set path. Once you
Yeah.
once you set out on your path, then the path starts unfolding in front of you, but it could be it could take you in any which way, in any direction. For me, it started out with a podcast, and then I was over in London for a little while. Then I came back and I was working in a cafe and trying to figure out cameras for a while. And then I met a mentor, and then I went off on like a little bicycle adventure, and I started figuring out cameras with that. And then, so in my mind, I had like when I was leaving real estate, I had this idea of like what it was going to be like, and it was nothing like that. It was completely just just a crazy path that goes in all different directions. But you just got to accept that it is going to get unconventional, and you are going to go down different paths that you never thought you would. But just go with the flow, and if you're following your passion and it feels right in your gut, then you're going in the right direction, and just keep going in that direction.
Yeah.
Listen to your gut and not your head.
Yeah. Easier said than done, but yeah, it's
Oh yeah.
great advice. So, tell us a little bit about, where we can watch your amazing adventures, and tell us a little bit about what we can expect as well. When, what are your adventures about and where are they?
Yeah, cool. So you can find my adventures on my YouTube channel, Life with Gooch, and I'll also be releasing some short form stuff and some smaller bite sized pieces, little side quests, little side stories from overseas, on my Instagram channel, which is also at Life with Gooch. And what can you expect? I got some really unique adventures coming up. You can expect some really raw, authentic adventures, where I experience a lot culturally. I'm going to some like pretty remote places where I'll be learning a lot about different cultures, and learning a lot about myself. And basically, on each adventure, it's, I guess you see a lot of a combination of both like the physical adventure where I'm putting in place like a lot of skills and I have to overcome something physically, but a lot of what happens on my adventures is mental, and I like to share that with the audience as well. So I'll be sharing, my doubts or insecurities, and the things I'm going through or the scenes I'm trying to shoot. I'll be sharing some behind the scenes stuff as well. And yeah, I just really want the audience to ride the journey with me, be as open as I can, be as authentic as I can, and yeah, and experience the lowest of lows and the highest of highs, basically, as I trek through mountains and pack raft through valleys and get myself into all sorts of weird and wonderful situations.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm definitely enjoying watching the journey unfold so far. I think you've got about 5 or 6 adventures up there already on YouTube, and lots of other shorts as well. And yeah, it's really inspiring. So yeah, just so inspired by you, and thank you for being so vulnerable and authentic and sharing some of your story with us. And yeah, just jump onto Life at Gooch. It's GOOCH.
Mm.
And yeah, look forward to checking in the future with you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This was amazing. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate you too, mate.
Thank you.